Okay, guys, my name is Benjamin Hinson. I'm a software engineering manager for Absa Bank. I look after transformation and software engineering principles within the organization.
Hey guys, I'm Andrew, also an engineering manager at Absa, and I mostly focus on infrastructure as a service. So I'll be taking you through tools and processes.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about where we come from. So we are from South Africa, Johannesburg. It's about 1,000 miles away from Cape Town. We work for a company called Absa Bank, which is a financial institution. Absa's been around for about 150 years, okay? It employs about 4,000 people just in its IT division. In 2016, Absa as an organization made a headline earning up 7.5% to about 7.25 billion rand. You guys can do the calculation, and it's still equivalent to a lot of dollars, okay? And we know that we live in a very disruptive and innovative world. Things are happening. Airbnb, Uber, Netflix, I'm sure you guys have heard of a lot of that stuff today, all right? Our saving grace really is that a lot of our startups fail. In fact, 75% of them fail. They are unable to cross the chasm to do some interesting things. They're unable to hit critical mass, right? And it's a little unfortunate because that means it gives us an opportunity to do some things, some interesting things. So Mark Andreessen rightfully said, he said, software is eating the world. And if we do not adapt, we will die, right? Eric Ries, the author of Lean Startup, he was pretty much on the same vein. He wrote a memo to himself, he wrote a letter reminding himself that, listen, our tech environment, the way things are moving is, it's very difficult. If we do not strategize, if we do not change the way we do things, we will become obsolete, okay? So what did we do? We decided, you know what, we wanted to go on this journey as well. So we came up with 3 pillars. We came up with an agile transformation team. We came up with a DevOps and engineering team, and we came up with a lean team. Some of you right now might see the anti-pattern emerging over here, but this is part of our journey. This is how we learn anyway. So let me tell you a little bit about the DevOps journey or the DevOps transformation. We were fortunate enough to get a gentleman from Chef. His name was Jeff Hackett, and he came down and he sort of helped us navigate this thing, what this journey looks like, what we need to do, the conversations we had, the tough conversations we had. And if essentially, we came up with something quite interesting. We came up with a DevOps acceleration workshop. That meant that we got all the software engineering teams within the bank to come and sit with us for 2 days. And in those 2 days, we sat down and gave them a whole bunch of knowledge about Agile, about an MVP, how everything came about. We spoke about Conway's model. We spoke about Elsa, a large number of material. And then we said, okay, you guys, after 2 days, you're good. Go back into your silos. Go back into your Babylonian systems and do something awesome. Come back and do something awesome. Show us what you've done. What do you think happened? Nothing, right? Nothing happened, and rightfully so. And it goes back to say, I read a book from Barry O'Reilly. He spoke about, he was the author of the Lean Startup, and there was a quote in the book that said, good people in perversely designed systems sometimes casually create great acts of harm on colleagues, and sometimes without even realizing it. Jeff Hackett also goes as far as saying, human beings are capable, intelligent, and whole. It's the systems that we design that are not good. Okay? We need to think about that for a second. We need to think about it because we know that if we throw good people in these systems, they will hurt, they will die. So we took another step back and we said, hold on, This is all about creating software, right? We need to orient around creating great software. It's about making great software. And when we do that, it's about orienting around our customer. It's about orienting around tools and processes and touching on culture, right? Everybody still with me? Cool. So we took another step back and we said, what does that really mean? What does that really mean? And we said, well, if it's about the customer, because we know that when a customer interfaces with the bank, they're interfacing with some piece of software. So what we wanted to do is enhance that experience. We wanted to make sure that whatever they did added value to their lives, all right? So we came up with a magic quadrant. We call that the magic quadrant. And our magic quadrant is DevOps is a union of culture, processes, and tooling, okay? And what we did is we take DevOps, Lean, and Agile to continuously deliver customer value and innovation. What does that look like, okay? So we had to look at the way work flows into a system. We looked at the blockers. We look at the things that we can remove so that we can add value back to our customers, okay? And we embedded that with a little bit of engineering practices, right? I'm going to leave it here for a bit, okay? And I'm going to hand over to Andrew, and he's going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like, okay?
All right, cool. Thanks, Ben. It's not too loud, is it? All right, cool. So let me take you through our journey through tools and software. So as you can imagine, a bank is full of strict controls and processes, layer upon layer over the many years that we've actually been a bank. And you can actually understand that we're very resistant to change. But hey, we wanted to create great software, but we had a few challenges to get through first. So the first one was that it was very difficult for us to get infrastructure to any teams. The processes were too slow, and this eventually ended up taking way too long. For instance, it used to take us 6 weeks to get a machine. Now, if you just stop to think about that for a second, 6 weeks to get a machine in a world where we want everything instantaneously, it's just not good enough. Also, our laptop specs wasn't great. So when you're trying to run kitchen or anything, it eventually, after 2 machines, just comes to a stop. My favorite one is actually internet access. So because of all the strict controls in the bank, our internet access was extremely restricted. So if you wanted to do research, it was very, very difficult for everyone to actually do research or download something that they wanted. So say they wanted, I don't know, a pick Ruby mine, for example. So you couldn't download it, so, sorry. So you couldn't download it, so what's the next best thing you do? You go home, you download it, you come back, right? So then you try and install it, and you're like, wait, I need admin rights. Great. All right, so this was very, very frustrating. So we thought about, okay, what can we do to change this? So what we ended up doing was creating a completely separate and isolated network called the engineering network. Now, what the engineering network is, it's completely separated from our banking network, which unblocks all the things that I previously spoke about. This is a place where we really wanted people to create and innovate. But the thing that I found is important is that with the engineering network, you need a place in order to make great software. So if engineering network didn't exist, I actually wouldn't be here giving you this talk. So let me take you through what our processes used to look like. So we analyzed the flow of work going through the system, and then we very quickly realized that infrastructure was actually our biggest blocker. But let me take you through the why I say that, right? So a developer goes and requests infrastructure, and once they go through that long, tedious process of checklists, you would then get scheduled for provisioning by an operations team. Once that was done, it would then go to another operations team to install the OS. Then what the OS team would do is attempt to install the application with the scripts that they got from the developers in an attempt to give them their system. But right, then something classic happened between the developers and the operations team, this constant back and forth of no man's land of ownership. And it kind of played out like this, right? So you've got a developer. Why is my application starting? Because your application sucks, right? So, so that's how it played out. And the other problem with this is that each one of these points wasn't completely automated. So there was a manual kickoff between each stage. And this caused, again, further delays. But once you eventually got your infrastructure, and shit happens, right? You decide that you need an additional dependency, or you forgot to install something, or you want to change something. And guess what? Need anything else? Go back to request system. Follow a very, very similar process. And no one wants to work like this. We certainly didn't want to. So, yeah, so this is kind of where our tools journey started. And this tools journey, this board here is actually it's specifically about our chef journey itself. So we try to do it the right way and run our tools journey like an agile software project. On the board here, you'll both find both the dev and the ops work. So we own both, so there's where it comes through is that ownership between the two. So now we've got this engineering network, and we've now decided that we've got the tool that we wanted to use, which is Chef. So now, before I just move on to why Chef, let me talk to you about the problems that we were trying to solve. So previously, in the banking environment, we got stuck trying to create this big silver bullet solution to solve all our problems, and created this huge Goliath, overly complicated pieces of software. The other problem was, for us to change technologies in the bank, say like a monitoring tool like Nagios or whatever we wanted to implement, to try and do this on 2,000 servers with a system that's not completely automated is hell. It's horrible. We also couldn't give people safe access to the Chef server. How do we do that when everyone's going there changing things? So why Chef? So we chose Chef because we felt that it was quite structured, it had quite a full feature-rich approach to it. Even though the learning curve at the beginning was quite steep, we found that for our non-developers, the operations guys, it was better for them to actually do the right thing because it had all the tools and test kitchen and everything that they needed. So this was, it was quite structured. So with our new network, our tools and our processes, we decided that, so we decided to carry on, and actually we wanted to automate everything. So we were excited, right? We wanted to get started. We didn't want to go through these long processes. So what did we do? We opted to go for a standalone Chef server. Nothing fancy to start. We were up and running in a day. And this was great. So we went mad. We automated absolutely everything we could get our hands on. It was great. But what was not so great is when we started running into problems. So it's fine for one team to use Chef server, but for multiple teams using Chef server, it's a problem. So the kind of things that they would do is they would log on to our Chef environment and start changing environments, either changing it to a version that didn't exist, or removing it, or removing one else, and it created this massive mess for us to try and manage. And this wasn't great. What we realized is that not everyone had a pipeline. So the strict controls that we put in place for our own pipeline was not necessarily what everyone else had. So then they would upload really bad code. So this is where we decided to go with Chef Automate. Now, Chef Automate actually handles all of this for us. We don't have to manage environments because it's done. So what it allows teams to do is it allows them to write and upload the Chef cookbooks through workflow automatically. We don't have to deal with that anymore. It brings structure, and it also brings structure in terms of Chef compliance, which I haven't really touched on much. So Chef compliance is great because it gives you that kind of upfront feedback. So we can kind of be proactive rather than reactive with Chef compliance. And it gave us the tools to automate our infrastructure as code, and automating all our tools and applications in a very, very modular way, which is great, which is something I'll touch on a little bit later about how easy it is to switch things out. But it wasn't all rainbows, right? Like nothing is. And we started running into again more problems. So now what happened is, so because we had adopted Chef Automate so early on, I think this was like last ChefConf is when they released it, and then we adopted it pretty much immediately after that. So we started running into other issues. One, I don't know if you guys are familiar with workflow, our build nodes disappeared after an upgrade. We're like, no. So now our pipeline just stopped for everybody, and this wasn't great. Then we tried to, because the engineering network has proxies, the Slack integration wasn't working because it didn't support proxy servers. So that was a problem for us. So yeah, so we had a few issues with it, and my favorite one is that with it's actually with push jobs. We had to do a bit of version pinning on the Linux OS to actually get it to work properly. But there's a bit of a silver lining to the story. Tom and Simon from Chef, some of you may know them, helped us work through these problems. But the thing that we really appreciated, is that the features that we wanted in Automate, they actually put in their backlog. So now let me take you through our new process. So this is what our new process looks like. And it should be familiar to you because it's actually a software flow of work. You might be thinking, okay, so what is this doing in infrastructure? Because that's how we do infrastructure, as code. So that's what we do. So previously I mentioned that about this whole engineering network. We've spoken about Chef. But the stuff that I didn't tell you about our engineering network was that it was built in AWS. It was also automated completely using Chef. And this was great for us. So now we've got everything unblocked. We can go to the internet. We can now get all the things that we require. So what we did is we started a team called Reason. Now, Reason is both a team and an application. It's an in-house product. So we started this MVP as an orchestration tool, and it connects to AWS, VMware, and a couple of other things in the bank that we want. What we also went and did is we integrated it with Chef. And it's pretty much an API caller. That's how you can think of it. So now something extraordinary happened. Now we gave this access to everybody. So now product teams can actually go and deploy their own infrastructure with Chef in one step. Where previously it used to take us 6 weeks to build a system, and now it takes us 30 minutes flat. And that's fantastic. That's something that we never had before. And that was great. So some of the benefits. So what are the benefits of everything I've spoken about up until now? Is that, like I said, with Chef Automate, it allowed teams to write and upload their own cookbooks through a pipeline. But now they can just go to Reason and say, I want that cookbook, and the whole system gets deployed. We never ever logged on to environments anymore. I mean, besides to debug them, everything was automated. Fix the problem through code. We never ever did it manually. The other thing with workflow is it greatly increased our velocity because of CI/CD pipelines, and that was fantastic. So the one thing that I found, and I mean, there's lots of things that we can talk about, but I mean, it's quite involved, so you can catch us a bit later. But the one thing I kind of want to leave you guys with is that there is no silver bullet solution. So keep it slim and keep it simple, because what it's really about is about adapting to change with little effort, and that's the key point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over back to Ben to chat to you about culture.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Okay, so that's the tooling process. That was the process, right? But in order for this to happen, we need to have a really strong culture, right? And to be able to do something that took us 6 weeks, takes us 30 minutes, requires some work, okay? And in Absa, we believe that culture is probably one of the most fundamental things in our organization. So what is culture, right? Well, culture is shared beliefs and values that are developed over a period of time, okay? And that's probably a Wikipedia definition. We also know that the longer the organization has been in existence, the more defined the culture is. So previously I said that, look, Absa's been around for 150 years. Okay, so imagine trying to influence or steer that culture in a different direction. It's a very difficult thing to do. Okay. Another thing is that employees in the organization don't really know the things that bind them together in that organization, right? So if you can't manage the culture will manage you, okay? And you don't want to be managed by a 150-year-old culture. It's a very, very tough and difficult place to be. Okay, so before I start talking about Reason and the awesome things that they did, I want to tell you guys a story. The Cobra effect. Some of you might know the Cobra effect, and any British people in here, I apologize in advance. Okay, so maybe 100 years ago, maybe a few decades ago, there was the British imperialists that went to India to colonize, and they had a serious problem with venomous snakes. Okay, so they set up an incentive. They went to the local Indian guys and said, okay, for any snake that you guys kill, bring it back to us and we'll give you some money. We'll give you something. So what they did is they went back, killed a couple of snakes, brought it back, they got some money. What did the Indians do? They realized that, hey, this is a good thing. So what did they do? They started breeding. All right, they started breeding these snakes. And then after a period of time, the British guys realized the snakes were getting smaller and smaller. And so they said, you know what, cut incentive, we're done. The Indians let the snakes go. So went back into the city and it caused a bit of mayhem. But that is the sort of behavior and incentive we don't want to be part of. That is the sort of culture we don't want to, we don't want to be part of. So what we're saying is that we want to meet you where you are and take you on that journey. Whatever changes and whatever things we want to do in the organization, we want to be there to go on that journey with you. Okay, so Andrew alluded to a team called Reason. Now, Reason is a very fascinating team. We started off fairly basic with a simple Scrum board, a bunch of stickies, and we said, okay, what do we really want to do? Where do we want to go? What sort of culture do we want to embed in this organization? And we said, okay, look, let's start off with an agile process. Let's just use a bit of Scrum. Let's just see what it's like. Because Scrum or agile has some fundamental values we want to instill in a team. So things like courage, things like commitment, things like communication, all of those lovely things we actually embedded in the team and said, this is what we want to do. These are the things that we're going to do. So daily stand-ups, taught them how to do retrospectives, did a bit of planning, teams got better and better, and we said, okay, guys, check your code in at least once a day. Not to say that they weren't doing that already. We're saying, let's take an XP principle and say, do it at least once a day. What happened was quite fascinating. Okay, so guys started sharing their code. People started to communicate a little bit better. They wanted to sharpen their skills, so their Java development and their craft became a little bit better, and there was a sense of mastery within the team. So we moved away from the boards and we went digital. We said, hey guys, you know what, we're doing okay. At least every 2 weeks we're giving something back to our customers because that was the goal. How about we start automating some of the stuff? How about we do some autonomy, something cool. So we started automating the work. And what happened was we saw the team having a little bit more time to do other things. They said, hey, I'm not here until 12 o'clock in the morning anymore. I got time on my hands, right? So let's start investigating. Let's be creative. Let's investigate tooling. Let's see how we can do things a little bit better. That created a sense of purpose, okay? And that purpose was bigger than the team. They realized that the work that they were doing was actually having an impact in the organization. So we took a step back and said, hey, something cool is developing here. This is nice. We've actually carved out a culture. This is the kind of culture we want in an organization. And I sort of alluded to what the mission and the vision was for the organization when we started the transformational journey. And really the mission was to think and build software like a tech organization. Okay? We wanted to build software at high velocity and high quality. We had started doing that, but in the beginning it was tough. We had to let people go. We said, hey, these are the rules. These are the practices. These are the things that we want to do. If you guys are not, if you don't want to be part of it, we'll let you go on your different journey. We didn't kick them out of the organization. We said, you don't form into, you don't fall part of our plan. Just try another team maybe. And if you change your mind and if you see what we're doing and you want to come back, by all means, And that's what happened. We created a sense of mastery, we created a sense of purpose, we created a sense of autonomy. And something brilliant happened as well. So outages happened, right? As Andrew said, we had some outages, we had some problems. People came in, they worked together, they started doing cool things, and we realized that we created an environment that was easy for them to fail in. There was no blaming. It was a place where people wanted to be. So, and there's a lot of other things that happened. We moved away from KPIs and we went to OKRs and all of that cool stuff. But then we said, what do we really want to do as an organization? What do we want to show from a cultural perspective? Because this is the key in enabling the organization. And we came about 3 or 4 platitudes. Well, they're not platitudes, but 3 or 4 things that people may see as a platitude. These huge, big words that you see, when you walk into organization. We don't talk about them. We do them. We do them and we show the value afterwards. So things like collaboration, things like creativity, things like ownership, right? Things like delivered value back to your customer. Those are the sort of organizational cultures that we want to instill in Absa, right? So without taking any more time or without going on and bragging about the cool things that we do, this is what I'm going to leave with you, okay? I see some guys are taking pictures. You can get the notes from us if you want, okay? So what should you do when you go back into your organization? What we think is that look at how work flows through your system, whatever it is. Identify what those blockers are. Look at them and try and remove them and identify customer value. Look at what you can do to orient around your customer, okay? Secondly, define your practices up front, right? What we say is, write a failing test. Right? If you don't write a failing test, it's not going into prod. Okay? Define your practices up front. Let them know. Okay? Like I said, your cultural expectations. Define it. Try and define it. Try and build it from the ground up. Don't. Look, we know that Google and Spotify have some rich cultures in their organization, and they use that to build a competitive advantage because they have the tacit knowledge of their people, right? And we can't take that and impose it on ourselves. But we know that if we start with our own, we'll get better at it. And be bold. Lastly, be bold. What we have is a Practices of Mastery website, and what we do is we share our successes on this website. So you guys are more than welcome to go and visit and take a look. So what's the future for Absa? Where are we going from here? And the short answer is we don't know. We don't anticipate the outcome. We work in a way that we start from building what we know and we just take it going forward. So that is us. So if you guys have any questions, please, by all means. Okay? Yes, sir.
Hi, earlier you had a sort of a life cycle diagram
Yes.
Can you tell us some of the tools that you're using there?
Let me just run back there.
Right there.
This one, yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the tracking tasks, we actually use Jira. We've got the entire suite installed. We've also got Bamboo in there, but we kind of use Jenkins as well. The development tools is quite fast, so that's Chef Workflow obviously is in that tool set. We've got a lot of other projects, a lot of different types of development. Some of the guys use code analysis like SonarQube and things like that. Then the version control is obviously Atlassian tool again.
Sure, a little bit of TFS.
Yeah, we've also got TFS for the Microsoft guys. Code reviews, we all do code reviews. And CI/CD is both Jenkins, Bamboo, and Workflow. And yeah, any other?
What test automation tools do you use?
So obviously we use InSpec for the chef stuff specifically. We use RSpec, InSpec. We also, Reason itself was built in Ruby, so we use RSpec there again.
The question is, how many teams, what's the size, and are they all geographically in one place?
That's a
Right?
great
And then
question.
follow-up question.
Yeah.
It's not overnight, it's not flipping the switch, right? So it's a journey. How long did the journey take until everyone is on board?
Okay, so I'll ask your last question first. Okay, so we've been on this journey officially for 24 months, about 24 months, okay? And our team was we were in the same building, but we weren't co-located. So we had a couple of guys from IS, which was operations. We had a couple of guys from dev. We had a couple of guys in other branches. And we said, in order for this to be successful, guys, we need to sit in one room. And we can't telecon. So we found the guys who were able and keen to join the journey and said, let's sit in this room and let's figure it out together. And that's what we did. We got to a point where we started off we were 7 guys. We got to a point where we were 25 in a team. And we thought, gee whiz, a stand-up and a planning session is now taking us 2 hours to do, which is, it's unreasonable. Like half the day is gone when we want to figure out what we wanted to do. So we said, let's break the team up slightly. So if there's a billing component, we make that a team on its own. And we have a UI component, make that team the UI. But we ran our sprints and our retrospective unilaterally, right? So we were always in the loop, and that's what we did. So we were scaling out, but we were scaling out not necessarily from a component perspective, but more from a product or feature perspective. So we said, the guys are doing billing, and they're using a bit of AWS. Who knows? That team in itself could be a seed company within Absa, right? So that's how we looked at it.
Just to answer your question also, the testing, I forgot Cucumber, but because our environment is completely automated, what we decided to do is, when you got development environments and you kind of do something on there manually and you forget about it and then it goes to prod and you're like, oh, whoops. And what we do now is we actually destroy the whole dev environment every Friday and we rebuild it on Monday. That's it.
But we must say also, so this process all started from an MVP. It's still a work in progress. It's not a shiny product that that we can really say. Yeah.
As I was listening to your talk, I got the impression that perhaps this was a small team within the overall IT organization. Is that sort of how it works? That you didn't end up, you're not doing the same things for your risk teams or your loan origination teams or your treasury teams or whatever yet, right? So this is consumer-facing apps only at this point?
No. So that's a fantastic question. So when we started out with our transformational journey, we wanted to do a big bang approach. We said the whole organization, everybody has to transform. We got the top dog, so to say, to talk down to the silos and say, this is how you're going to work. And we realized that didn't work. But some of those nuggets of information stayed with various parts of the organization. They started doing good things. So you mentioned compliance. What we've done now is that we have completely automated that compliance process. So a different team in an organization wants to build something cool. And they get to a point where in the bank that you have to checklist a whole lot of things. So the governance and compliance, and it could be a 5-10 page document. And sometimes we don't know if it's gonna get into prod or not. But that process has now been automated into Jenkins. So up front, before you start any dev, you know what your compliance controls are already, and you cater for those things before you get to the end of the process, right?
Yes.
And
No, it's okay.
So continue.
Yeah, so we started small, right? Like Ben said, we didn't go with the big bang approach. So we looked at, we spoke to our internal customers, our business units, and said, what's your biggest pain point? They said, builds. The base build of our system takes long, because in the bank we got 13 different applications that are stacked on top of it. So we picked that, and we handpicked people from different teams, and it was a mixture of developers, infrastructure, security people, you name it. And Ben was there as well. He started them on off the culture. I did the more technical side of it. And we did it. We did it in 3 months. We had redone the whole thing. And that's where we proved our value. And then we moved on from there, and that kind of morphed into reason. Then we did billing, and then we split the team into a reason and billing component, because now they're more involved.
So are these teams that you're talking about, are they cross-functional, or did you do an org change?
No, cross-functional. So these are people from different departments, right? Some IS, some different business units. And because of this culture, now we've put people together, and it's, again, like I said, it's developers, operations, and we cross-functioning them, and they're all learning from each other, so it's great.
So, yeah, Adam?
What kind of challenges did you face with your management layers?
Do you want to go first, or should you answer that question?
Yeah, so, at the beginning, a lot of people were resisting to change. When we put these teams together, it was like, I'm going to lose my job. They don't need us anymore. But that wasn't the case. What we try to do is we created this role, this engineering management role but that person needs to have development experience. So he can emphasize with the guys and be a little bit more sympathetic to, hey, my code's not working. Hey, don't make your problems mine, just I want my software. So you can understand exactly what's happening. And from the other team's point of view is we get them together and we kind of get them working with us. So now we've got database as a service, we've got PaaS as a service, and we're all working together and seeing where we can help each other in different sections. It has taken some time though.
Yeah, and look, when we talk about resistance, we didn't start with the language, because we felt that we wanted to add the value first. And we say we want to do something, the immediate answer is generally no, you can't do it, it's not going to work. Go and do something else. So we just kept quiet, and we did this thing that you said can't be done, put a smile on their face, and they said, okay, how about you try this? We did that, and they're like, okay, this thing seems like it's working. Eventually they came a lot closer to us, and they started sitting. We tried to get them to sit within the teams, to be, product owners or whatever, so they could give us direct direction to the products that they wanted. Yeah. You had a question in front, sir?
So how did you measure the change? How did you know you were on the right track? Were there certain metrics that you were using?
So we didn't have specific metrics per se. So what we had is, we use various ways to prioritize the work. We got the customer in the room, and a lot of our customers were internal customers, and you can almost think of them as standalone businesses, right? And we get a piece of work. We get, whatever we get, we start to, we size them. We use a Moscow model, and we know how large that piece of work is. We sit down, we throw that into a sprint. We get the teams to start calculating a velocity. So we start to say, well, this is what this is the piece of work, this is a piece of functionality that they want, we know over a period of time, maybe after we get a constant cadence, we know that this is what this is what we're measuring. This is how well we know, or this is how big this piece of work, and this is how we know that the measure is correct by giving it to them and saying, we like it, we don't like it. But if you're asking about measurement, what are you talking specifically about, the customer measurement or the value of the work?
Yeah, I don't know. But the cultural transformation, the employee engagement, I don't know what the right measure is. I mean, you're probably right. In the end, it's about are you making customers happy?
Happy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with our customers, a lot of the time we guess what they want, and they say, oh, okay, that's not useful at all. And you're like, whoops, I just wasted 6 months of development. So we've got product owners. And also those product owners also have a technical and ops background, so we can be a bit, have a bit of empathy for everybody. And that's important rather than people. We don't have this kind of shouting match culture anymore. So we look at the customer and say, what is your biggest pain points? Like I mentioned earlier, is that builds are our biggest pain point. Great, we'll focus on that first. Great, what's next? And then we keep going in that cycle. And because we're very agile, we kind of set things per quarter. So we've got 4 quarters a year. And we say, cool, we're going to do this. And then, great, what's next? Oh, we were going to do this, but we kind of want you to do this. All right, great, we'll go and do that. So that's where the kind of value and measure comes from.
It's a big negotiation. We sit down with a lot of people and negotiate how the work is going to go, but we don't necessarily put a specific figure to our work. It's more of an outcome-based value. Yeah. Any other questions? Right at the back.
You guys use Habitat and Firewall?
We want to, yeah. But like everything, like this journey, has taken us, what, year and a half?
24 months, close to 24 months, yeah.
So we want to use Habitat, but like one step at a time. There's lots and lots of things we want to do. We're creating our own billing engine now as well. So currently we're looking at Docker containers, and we found that Habitat is quite similar, obviously a lot lower down. But we'll get there eventually when we've got the time. And also, we can't just do it if we don't have a need to do it yet. So once the customer says that they want something like that, we'll definitely do it.
Sure. Gentleman in the front again. Yeah.
We're just starting this journey, and I think people are on board like at 1 p.m. They're fine behaving this way. It's 1 a.m. and your website's down. How do you get people to behave this way? If your website's down, people's natural reaction is they just want to do what they've always done to get it fixed, right? They're going to go add CPU to a specific machine. That's going to fix it. Get you, to go back to sleep. How did you solve that?
Okay. That's classic, right? Like, oh, my database is slow, so let me add 24 more CPUs and 32 gigs of memory. Yeah, it's fine for a while, and then it crashes. So when that happens, obviously, if it's an immediate outage, we go and figure out what's wrong, and like Ben says, we rally together, and we get it done. Sometimes not necessarily with just the people in our team. But for longer performance issues, that we have issues, we actually go and start doing more testing and start digging through the system. So that has happened with Reason as well. And like a billing engine is actually a fantastic model. So we actually built it originally in Ruby, and it got so big, we chose the wrong tool. And it took 4 hours to run a billing engine with 2 million lines of billing data. So we changed it to Java and Spark, and now we can import data into MongoDB in 14 minutes with 2 million lines. So we have to do that investigation, and sometimes you have to rewrite it from scratch.
Right, and
so 1 a.m., right? Dev and whatever support, level 3, sleep, level 1 gets it. They make a change directly on the system.
Right.
That was
They do it in chat.
Exactly. So instead of modifying the recipe, right? AppOps, which is their primary goal, is business content, right? Get service recovery. So they make the system change directly, then next time back to where it was before, right? The configuration wasn't recorded.
Are you talking?
We actually brainstormed that and we don't have a solution yet.
So you're saying not specifically from a chef or anything perspective, someone jumps on the box manually and changes something?
Yeah, so in the context of chef, right? In the primarily, so instead of driving those config changes through chef recipes, someone directly made the change who had the admin access to do so, with the goal of getting the systems back up so the revenue flows through, right?
Yeah, so the way we structured is that would happen in dev, sure. That's also why we rebuild our systems, because sometimes people do things manually and ends up in prod, so we rebuild it every week. So very quickly we figure out that that thing's not working, and why is it not working, then we automate that thing. But for when we move from engineering network, which is isolated, over to production, we actually don't have access to production anymore. We do it entirely through pipelines. So we actually push the entire thing right across. So we've got dev and obviously dev UAT, and we start removing access at every stage. So dev, you have root access, so you can figure out all your dependencies, rather than your developers being restrictive, like, I can't install this thing. And then with UAT, we actually remove root, so we can say to the guys, okay, put in all your sudo rules and all the things that you require so that you can actually make sure that you've got everything you need, so you don't actually need root to function on the server. Then we actually push it to production. We generally, we don't really have access. Obviously, level 1 support, we do, but we start restricting that access very heavily. Yeah. So it's quite a different approach. It is like
When you're an e-commerce company and your site's down, and someone tells you, sorry, I can't fix it, nobody has access.
Yeah, so we do have access, but we can't get it willy-nilly, right? So to get root access to our system is a different structure. So we can get in through our reason user, for example, the billing user, but we actually have to request it from a system called PowerBroker. And then we request it, and we say, okay, that's a valid request, just to stop people logging onto our production server and doing stupid things.
So I guess the question, which I think is a great question, that I've heard from multiple people in the company, when you start using pipeline to automate the whole CPU, let's say it's very good and it takes you 10 minutes to stand up an environment and test everything. So your outage window is now at 45 minutes because if you go on a server and fix it, then a couple minutes later, chef comes back and reverts it. Or you have the single point of entry, which is your pipeline, and then your outage over 45 minutes, right? Your time to recovery increases.
Yeah, so we had an issue just like that with Reason. So we deployed it, and we're like, whoops, and that happens, right? So we actually now using kind of green-blue deployments, where we deploy to one half the environment because Reason's pretty stateless. And then we're like, okay, great, it's cool. We've done, so we don't just say deploy it and say, yeah, it's fine and go home. We actually jump on and make sure we run through the process just like a customer to make sure everything's working. And once we're happy, then we deploy the other side. And there's lots of things that you can do like that. We only have 2 layers. Some people have 3, 4 layers like that, like Netflix.
I have a different question. I was wondering, so this initial push to change the culture, where did it originate from? The technology side or the BI side?
So when you're talking about the push to culture, as in the people culture?
As in, you said it's an over 100-year-old company that does things in a very traditional way. At some point, someone, a group of someone, decided that this is necessary for competitive reasons or technologies, keep people moving. Whatever it may have been. I'm actually really curious where that kind of originated in order to propagate to the whole company.
So South Africa's so the business environment is quite competitive. So we as a bank, had a banking license for a very long time. So now we've realized that retail companies are also getting a banking license. The post office is getting a banking license. The medical industry, people like Discovery Health and AIA, they are getting a banking license, they're becoming competitive. And we're realizing that there are certain things that they can do that traditionally they couldn't do before. So we thought about it, and people sat down and said, hey, you know what? If we do not change, certain things will happen to us, and we don't want to be that company that got eaten by, a retail company or a health company. And also, I think it was also largely because people were feeling the pain, of certain systems, and they wanted a way to alleviate that pain by doing different things. So when you talk about a group of people, we had a very progressive CIO, or a very progressive CTO said, hey guys, we need to change the way we work. We need to look at different ways. Sometimes you get guys who sit on an airplane and open up a flight magazine and they see agile, or they see something and they sort of shut down and say, that's the way we're going to work. And sometimes that's the case, but we took that and we said, let's refine it as we go along. So that was the initial thinking, right? We're trying to be competitive in a very unstable economic environment. And the only way we felt that could work was through changing the way we treat our people, changing the way we engage with people, changing the way we do a lot of things, right? And that's where it originally, that's where it comes from. That's the root of it all.
I remember, like I said, the thing is that you've got to be able to adapt quickly. Now, if you think of a banking system, it's quite big. So you've got to be able to make your systems modular enough so you can change. And it took us a long time to get there, to figure that out.
Right. And that's just, what we're speaking about is a very small portion of the bank. The rest of the bank is still very, very traditional, very, very rigid. But we sort of cleaning our own house first. Sort of the IT guys, the 4,000 people we trying to change, and then we can go back into insurance and say, hey, insurance, how are you guys doing your things? Then we can go back into HR and say, hey, HR, how about this? We're not necessarily going to prescribe, but we're going to sit with them and say, what are your challenges? What are your biggest pain points? How can we help you? Where can we find synergies and do something cool? But we first need to sort our house out. We need to fix us first before we can go to others.
Yeah, I'm getting the signal, so catch us outside.
Thank you very much. Thank you.